Hello and welcome to Devil's Advocate and a special interview on India-Pakistan relations with Foreign Minister Salman Khurshid. Foreign Minister, let's start with Hina Robani Khar's offer of talks to sort out tensions on the line of control. Conversationally, you've described it as a positive step, but 3 days later, what is your government's official response?
I don't understand what you mean by an official response. See, these are ongoing developments. What is important is, I said this is a positive signal, but I think what we need to do is to ensure that multidimensionally the atmospherics improve. We did hit a low point, obviously, a few days ago, and I think it's important that we get back to a level of atmospherics that can be described as near normal, that the LOC remains peaceful, and that there is no incident that is counterproductive. Then we can think of moving forward in a meaningful way.
In other words, you want a period of time to prove that the LOC, which is peaceful at the moment, is actually genuinely peaceful, and this is not an aberration.
I don't think
and secondly, you want an improvement in atmospherics, and then you'll move forward.
Isn't that sensible? That, you know, isn't it sensible not to hasten and rush into things that you're not fully prepared for, and that where any failure or any disappointment can lead to implications that are not necessarily very productive.
So there's a real sense in which you're waiting to judge the sincerity of the Pakistani response, because you want to judge it in terms of peace on the LOC, and you also want to judge it in terms of improvement of atmospherics, then you'll go forward.
Well, except for that, I don't want to necessarily label the word sincerity to get a reaction to someone else saying, well, you show your sincerity. I don't think we should get involved in that kind of exchange. I think it's important that in totality the situation looks more acceptable, looks more peaceful, and then of course, now it's another matter if you say, well, if it's peaceful, then what do you need to do? I think what we need to do is step by step move in a manner that doesn't allow something like this to happen again.
Let me try and understand the thinking that lies behind what you said. Would you accept that Pakistan's offer of talks is a significant shift from its initial position that the beheading should be inquired into by the United Nations, and therefore what Pakistan has done is to try and reach out?
Well, I think that can be described as correct. We have a very, very long established position, and that position is that these matters must be dealt with bilaterally between Pakistan and ourselves. In which manner, at what level, these are things that are worked out from time to time.
But you accept that the statement from Pakistan is a significant shift from its original initial position?
Well, yes. I mean, I think it's a departure from what we heard in the first couple of days, and that was, and we had made it very clear, that was very clearly not acceptable to us.
Now, you've said that meaningful talks can only happen when the environment or the atmospherics are right. Separately, the Pakistan High Commissioner Salman Khurshid, in an interview to the Times of India, has said that Pakistan will be prepared to consider India's demand for an inquiry into the beheadings. Is that a step that will help create the right atmosphere, the right environment?
See, I think the right environment is both a factual thing and it's also a matter of perception. I think both of those have to go hand in hand.
Into which category does Salman Khurshid's statement fall?
Well, that is a stated position, and I think it's important. Well, it's anticipating a fact, right? It's proposing a fact. But what we need to do is to actually put all this at a point where some conversation begins. There hasn't been a conversation. We've been talking through the media. When we reach the stage where a conversation can begin at whichever level, that's when one can talk about it.
You know, you talked about perceptions, you talked about needing to wait for conversations to begin. At the moment, as you say, you're only talking through the media. You've said that you need the right environment for dialogue. Many people turn around and say, actually, dialogue changes the environment. Is Salman Khurshid putting it the wrong way around?
No, I agree, that's true. It's true that dialogue leads to an environment, but there is a minimal environment you need for a dialogue. And that minimal environment can come in many ways. Sometimes it comes with passage of time, sometimes it comes with another incident that leads to you believing there's a minimum.
A statement from the Pakistan foreign minister, an official statement, which is more than just talking through the media, is not sufficient to change that environment?
I've said that when the environment changes, both sides will know it's changed. And I think it's important. This is not a private conversation that takes place between two parties, two countries, or between two foreign ministers. It's something in which two nations are involved.
But what I'm trying to understand is, what more do you need? You've had an official statement. You concede that it is a significant shift from the initial position Pakistan took, yet clearly it's not enough for you to respond by saying, yes, we'll talk. So what more are you looking for?
I'm not saying we won't talk. I'm not saying we will talk. All I'm saying is,
give us more time.
This is a good, positive signal. Now
but it's not sufficient.
Let's see what happens. I don't know. I mean, see, it's not the foreign minister alone who decides anything. You've got to have a sense of compatibility and a sense of acceptability in terms of what the government's perceptions are.
You say it's not the foreign minister alone who decides everything, and is there therefore a sense in which your colleagues in cabinet are holding you back? That maybe you and the PM are keen to say yes to Hina, but your colleagues are holding you back.
No, why should anyone hold anyone back? But we've got to ensure that we share a perception, and that somebody on their own alone are not going to move out in a manner in which the others will not know that we are going in the right direction.
I'll tell you why I ask whether your hands are being restrained by your colleagues in government or possibly in the Congress party, because many people believe that the lack of decisiveness in your response to the Pakistani offer of talks, or your reluctance and hesitation, is a reflection of the fact that your government was boxed into a corner both by the hot-blooded statements made by opposition leaders as well as by the warmongering debates on television. Is that why you're restrained?
Can I give you an answer in one word? The answer is no. No. It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that out of context debates take place on media. But then the media is free. You have to take the good and the bad of the media if you believe in a free society. But we are not going to be influenced necessarily by jingoist conversation that takes place on some sections of the media.
Your own initial response, and I'm quoting you, the situation demands very responsible, very sensible and moderate behavior. We're not going to be pressurized by wild calls for revenge and reaction.
We're not.
Days later, suddenly the Prime Minister says, at Army Day, it's not business as usual. There was a marked shift from your moderation to his hardline, almost belligerence.
Not at all. I see, the thing is, you either have a response in one single word that we all repeat, in which case you'll get bored to death by us.
Or different people say different things.
Or you have ways of describing a position that we've taken.
What happens when that way of describing seems to go from softness and moderation to belligerence?
There is no belligerence. I'm sorry, this is not belligerence. This is a very carefully crafted statement saying that you have to take what we have suffered, you have to take very seriously. Until you take it seriously, how do we move forward?
So there's no sense in which the government's reluctance to respond to Hina Rabbani Khar, your hesitation, your waiting for time, is a reflection of the fact that you're boxed into a corner by the opposition and the media?
We are not boxed into any corner. We are taking a decision which we believe is in the national interest. We are taking a decision in a very objective, sensible manner, and I think it reflects truly what our duty and obligation is at this time. And I do believe that it's important that you take steps carefully so that you don't slip and you don't lead to a disappointment.
Except that you seem to be taking steps deliberately, slowly, not just carefully, and with reluctance and hesitation.
Consciously, not deliberately, consciously. And I think that when you're dealing with sensitive matters of such high import, you should be conscious of what you're doing.
Is there a sense, whilst you, to use my phrase, agonize over how to respond to Hina Rabbani Khar, that actually the peace process itself is on pause and hold?
I don't think so. I think the peace process is going well. What our indication is that we have got back on track quite a bit. I don't even know to what extent we'd gone off track, but there certainly was a sense that we were slipping. And I think we've got back on track considerably. That's a good sign, and we would want that to continue. But obviously time will tell that we are actually back on track or not.
So if I could interpret what you're saying, You're suggesting that relations are back to near normal, not fully normal, but near normal. There's a bit more needed.
See, we were still not completely devoid of engagement. There are standard levels of engagement that continue. Don't forget that we did have a very good conversation between two of our DGMOs. Now, the DGMO conversation is not something new. That is the standard practice that we already have in place. But that conversation was meaningful, was positive, and it went in the right direction, and therefore I say these are good signals.
Now, Hina Rabbani Khan and the Pakistan Foreign Office are undoubtedly hearing you as you speak in this interview. What message should they take from what you've said? Should it be that you need a bit more time, you need perhaps the atmosphere to improve a little bit more before you respond more definitively? Is that the right message?
I don't need to amplify what I've said. Now, I'll just repeat what I said. These are good signals. We seem to be moving in the right direction, but I think it's important that we move carefully, step by step, so that we don't make a mistake in haste. Now, what's wrong with that? This is not belligerence, this is not reticence, this is not reluctance, this is just sensible, positive behavior.
Foreign Minister, let's take a break at that point. When I come back, I want to turn and focus on how you handle the crisis itself. That's in a moment's time. Stick with us. Welcome back to Devil's Advocate and an exclusive interview on India-Pakistan relations with Foreign Minister Salman Khurshid. Foreign Minister, let's change focus and talk about how you responded as a government to this crisis. After an initial period of restraint and sobriety, you put visas for the elderly on hold, you sent back hockey players, you cancelled plays in both Jaipur and Delhi. Can you today, with hindsight and reflection, accept that those were silly populist gestures and a mistake?
Karan, let me share this with you. The Senate government did not formally reflect on any decision that could be described as a decision that led to any of these events.
Then how did these things happen?
But a lot of this was done normally, automatically by organizers themselves. I do know for...
But the visas being put on hold?
No visa has been put on hold. Only one element of visas was queried by some of our agencies, and it was only a matter of postponing. Who put anything on hold?
Except for the fact that the query by the agencies happened on the day it should have happened. And people say, agencies don't leave queries to the last possible moment. That was just an excuse for deferring something.
It's not an excuse. It was actually a genuine concern about putting something right. That's all. It was a genuine concern. Maybe a coincidence gives it an impression that it was done for a different
Minister, you're suggesting that the putting on hold of visas, the sending back of hockey players, the cancellation of plays was not a well thought out decision. It was things that individuals did, hockey players, arbitrarily or individually.
Not arbitrarily.
But
not
individually,
arbitrarily.
without consulting the government.
Keeping a context in mind, keeping the developments that had taken place and their responsibilities. As far as the hockey players were concerned, there's a responsibility of the organizers in the
But
matches.
there was no decision by the cabinet as a whole to take these steps.
There was no decision by the cabinet at all.
Was in fact the cabinet consulted or aware these were going to happen?
The cabinet is not consulted on somebody organizing a match and deciding that match can't be held in a particular place because there is...
Or about the plays.
All about the place. There's no decision that we've taken, I'm telling you.
So all of this came as a bit of a surprise to you?
It's not a bit of a surprise. There are things that happen, you get information. I'm talking to you. Have I talked to the cabinet to be able to talk to you? No. But this is part of a normal process and normal mandates that people have.
Let me put it like this. Many people have been very critical of these steps. Do you think on reflection they should have been taken? Do you think they were unnecessary?
No, see, it's not fair upon me to judge someone who has a free mandate to decide what to do with an organization under which they've extended...
Don't judge him, just past comment whether you think it is the right thing to do.
I can't, it'd be unfair. I should have him sitting here explaining why they've taken a decision, and in that case I can either say, well, with hindsight, I would think that this is wrong or right, or with hindsight, I would say...
People will be disconcerted by the fact that these things just happened without the government being aware, besides being consulted and giving permission.
Government doesn't and should not get involved in decisions that relate to a range of activities which are people-to-people contact, provided that the broad platform of people-to-people contact is something that we have agreed upon.
I'll tell you why people worry. Because when you start targeting sports, culture and visas, when there's side by side a reluctance to respond to Pakistan's offer of talks, what you end up doing is demoralizing the pro-India constituency in Pakistan and encouraging the anti-India hardliners, and that's not wise for India to do.
Well, it's a good sound advice that you're giving us. We will not countenance for a moment a position in which we will discourage peace constituencies either in India or in Pakistan. You can be quite sure of that.
All right, a second issue. There's no doubt that it was unacceptable and unpardonable for Pakistani soldiers to behead Indian soldiers. But how do you respond to the view that this happened in retaliation for the killing of a Pakistani soldier and the injuring of another one by Indian firing 2 days earlier?
See, I don't think we can now go into a debate about tit for tat. As far as this issue is concerned, we consider it to be a tactical issue concerning local operations of the army.
But a retaliatory one as well.
No.
That's the important point I'm asking.
As far as we are concerned, this word retaliation we do not accept and we do not encourage. But there is a responsibility upon the army at the border or the line of control to do what is at that time tactically necessary for them to do. And it can be handled at that level. It is normally handled at that level, and it should not be allowed to get and become a huge political question.
But you slightly sidestepped the core of my question, which was this, that the beheading of 2 Indian soldiers, many people believe, was a retaliation for the earlier killing of one Pakistani soldier and injuring of another by firing from the Indian side.
It's not the first time somebody has died at the line of control. We've had many more deaths in the past. The good thing is that the deaths had come down dramatically and radically. Firing does take place at the line of control when something gets out of hand, and there are casualties as well. But we don't treat this as civilized people. We don't treat this as an occasion for taking revenge, and that too in such an unacceptable manner.
There's no doubt that the beheading of Indian soldiers was gruesome, it was macabre, it was utterly unpardonable. But there is a sizable body of evidence which clearly suggests that Indian soldiers have also beheaded Pakistani soldiers, not just at Kargil, but also in the recent past. Should you as a government bear that in mind when you handle this crisis?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, this is a matter, is a tactical issue the army can handle, has been handling and will continue to handle. I don't think we need get involved in how the army handles its own troops.
No, I don't mean in terms of army handling.
Then?
I mean in terms of political response. The Pakistanis did something gruesome, but there's enough evidence and proof that we've done similar things to them in the past.
We are not, just in order to overcome something that is unpleasant, unacceptable, and that's happened now, we're not going to reopen everything going back to 1950. We're not going to now bring out everything and say, well, what about that and what about that? We have to look forward, but something has happened right now. We cannot give the impression that nothing causes concern to us. This is something that was of an extreme nature. This is something that has caught public imagination in a manner which I do believe is something that we needed to respond to, and we have.
What I'm really suggesting is this: no doubt this was something of an extreme nature, gruesome, barbaric, unforgivable. But given that in the past, including according to military sources who spoke to the Hindu just last year at Kanna, Indians have beheaded Pakistani soldiers, should we bear in mind that both sides have done gruesome, unforgivable things to each other, and should that be at the back of our mind when we respond to this?
I don't know. I can't set the agenda now. I can't tell you exactly what is it we will accept as part of a conversation if a conversation takes place. When the DGMOs talk to each other, I'm sure all facts on both sides are available. They are familiar with the terrain. They are familiar with the history of what has happened. And then they come to a conclusion, and I think we are very happy that the DGMOs have been able to communicate, and that the communication has proved to be of a positive nature.
One last issue: there are some people in India who believe that what lies behind the skirmishes and the gruesome beheading of Indian soldiers is a new interventionism, a new assertiveness on the part of the Pakistan army. They believe it's linked to the turmoil internally in Pakistan. They believe it's linked to the fact that the Pakistan army has resolved some of its issues with America. Do you share that assessment, or do you disagree with it?
Why should we interfere with internal matters of Pakistan? obviously, when we deal with any country, we analyze whatever is the prevailing atmosphere, what are the conditionalities, what are the contributions that different segments and sections of their society are making. We factor that into our responses. But for us to publicly talk about something that relates to internal affairs of another country is uncalled for.
One last question. How do you view General Kayani? Do you see him as inimical to India?
Well, I don't know. I will tell you one thing, that the general perception in the past has been that we are better off with civilian governments, and therefore we felt that if Pakistan was to complete 5 years of civilian rule, of an elected civilian government, that would be a good thing for the entire region. And we do believe, and the Prime Minister has said this many times, that democracies don't fight each other, and therefore hoping, expecting and persuading democratic governments to strengthen their base is something that India considers to be
so the quick corollary to what you're saying is that India believes it's important that the Zardari government complete its term.
No, I think what is important is that democracy is strengthened. It is not for us to specify democracy being strengthened in a particular way, but democracy should be strengthened, and I think that's what we have said consistently.
That quickly to Kayani, is he inimical to India, or is he someone that you factored in? And
you've got to ask him. You have interviews with everybody. You must ask him. Why don't you ask him at an interview?
Salman Khurshid, that's a very clever reply. A million thanks for this interview.
Thank you very much.